Well, we were talking about you won on Saturday at the 66th March meet, and you're not going to race again till 4 o'clock on Sunday. So you have all day to watch your competition to find out who you're going to race. What went on Sunday? You just sit around? You just what did you do?
We just sat around. And then in the afternoon, there wasn't anything to do but just watch and watch and watch. And by this time, you've watched so much drag racing on one weekend. Of course, if it was some important folks, everybody'd run to the fence and watch them and then come back. So the car didn't really need any real maintenance, but we thought, well, we'll just take the oil pan off and check the bearings and just kill some time by doing something. It was completely unnecessary, but we just did it. It'll maybe calm Mike down. Mike gets very high strung. And so we jacked the thing up and got underneath and worked on it. Anyway, gave it a nice service and just killed as much time as we could. And then it's time to warm the dragster up. And so we thought, well, we'll just get Mike to just go drive around. There's a big empty area in the pit area, so we'll just get him to go drive around. Maybe it'll calm him down and just get out there and just drive the dragster.
Driving the dragster, okay,
Yeah.
around
So-
to calm him down.
And to warm the car up.
Okay.
And so we probably still got another half hour or so before the final round's going to run. So we do that. Mike drives around, and he's warmed the car. He knows how long it takes. So he just goes and drives until he knows it's good and warm, and he comes back. And anyway, so then we still had to probably wait another, half hour, 15 minutes or something before the actual last round. One thing about the Bakersfield drag racers, they were really good guys, all of them. And they'd fuss and feud amongst themselves. But at a big event, they would all stick together. What they would do was, as each Bakersfield team would be eliminated in the elimination rounds, the losers would all pull into a circle. And there was a big expanse of pavement, so there was no shortage of space to do this. They would form a big circle, and that car and all of the spare parts and equipment they had became part of the available to all the other remaining Bakersfield cars that were still in competition. And then all the crew from each car would now become part of the workforce. So they would end up with all these parts and all these people. So as the rounds go on, James Warren and Roger Coburn's car, might even have been Miller at the time, probably. Yeah, it was probably Warren, Coburn, and Miller.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they're cannibalizing all these other cars and just keeping their car going, because they end up being the winner on Sunday. So by the time we race them, they've got a motor in that's never been in the car, and a motor plate that's nothing knows nothing,
fits.
and these parts don't fit those parts, and there's no holes where these bolts go. And
And a come along, what was that?
they have a cable, kind of a engine lifting
Right.
device. Got a handle and a cable. They hooked that thing somehow around the engine. They came along the side of the frame and they hooked it to the back of the frame behind the driver. And then they just
Tightened it up.
tightened it up to suck the motor back
To
in
hold
the
the
car,
engine
because
in the
there's-
car.
There's no
Doesn't fit.
bolts holding it, right?
Right, okay.
And it's just this conglomeration of parts. And here they come to the starting line. It sounded great when it got to the starting line. But when he put the clutch in, it pushed the motor forward enough that the motor got away from the clutch pedal, and it was the same as like letting the clutch out.
Right.
So the car got a red light by leaving too early
Oh,
as he raised the RPM. Or,
right.
it's something like that.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, he ends up getting the red light, and then we end up winning the event. Right?
Right.
But it was always a treat to see the Bakersfield guys, how they'd stick together, and then they could get back to their fussing and feuding like they normally did.
Right. Right.
Just great guys.
My name is Frans Vandenbroek, and when I was 17 years old, I was a spectator at the U.S. Fuel and Gas Dragster Championships in Bakersfield, and I had a spontaneous interaction with the surfers that made me a fan for life. By now, most of you are probably familiar with the technical prowess of the team, but I'm here to tell you about their grace, their character, their humanity, and their charity. So it'll be a little bit of a different approach, but I think this is an aspect of the surfers that maybe hasn't been covered as yet. So I hope to fill that void.
Very good. Where were you born?
Not in America, obviously. In Indonesia, which was a Dutch colony for many, many years. And so my dad was a Dutchman. Mom was half and half. And we left Indonesia in 1958 because of the troubles, the political problems. Our lives were at risk. And we left for Holland for a couple of years, and then in 1960 immigrated to the United States. That would be Longmont, Colorado, is where we landed. And in Longmont, I first became aware that everybody in America seemed to have a car. And that's not what we're used to. Outside of America, most people get around on mopeds and bicycles. And in fact, our family in Indonesia Dad was middle class. He had a 250cc German motorcycle. And he would pile the whole family on this thing, all six of us. I think most of you have probably seen pictures in National Geographic of an Asian family
Yes.
on a motorcycle, right?
Yes.
Almost like a circus
Amazing.
act.
Yes. Amazing.
That was us.
Wow.
That was us in that picture.
Wow.
All six of us on this 250cc NSU, and we would go everywhere. But when we came to the U.S., we noticed everybody had a car, and even the young people had cars, although they tended to be older models. And they would do very strange things. They would take off the fenders and the hood, and they would take the roof and bring it down lower, and then they'd put a big engine in there with a big thing up on top that made a lot of noise.
Custom paint job.
Yeah.
Custom paint jobs. And they would race them, but not on road courses like we were used to. They would go side by side for a quarter mile. This was all very new to me, and I was 12 years old, but fascinating. So across the high school in Longmont, Colorado, was Sullivan's Drugstore, and it had a magazine rack. And it had this wonderful series of magazines, Carcraft and Road and Track and Hot Rod magazine. And I couldn't afford to buy them, but I would go into Sullivan's and I would read his magazines.
Yes.
And at one point somewhere in there, I noticed that the evolution of the cars that they were racing went from fenderless street cars to something that was long and skinny and slender, the slingshot.
Right.
And there was this photograph of this gorgeous dragster, and it was the Greer Black Prudhomme dragster. The picture was bright red. It was on the cover of Hot Rod as well. And so I became an instant fan. Don Prudhomme, he was the man. But Longmont, Colorado doesn't have any drag racing.
Right.
There's no drag strip, so chances of seeing a drag race, much less Greer Black and Prudhomme, pretty nil. Then in 1963, Dad finally had enough of the cold in Colorado, and he moved the family to California. And we lived in North Orange County, a place called Cypress. And about that time, in the paper, I saw an advertisement for a drag strip somewhere in Long Beach, Lions Drag Strip. I thought it was a wild animal park. And some people might argue, who've been there, that it was.
Sure.
Especially in
Definitely.
like 72.
In
Yeah.
The
72.
wild animal.
Bobby,
park.
yeah, right. I know. Hi, good to see you, man. You're a familiar face in this whole thing. Johnny Phillips, you're back here too.
I am.
We expect to hear from you from time to time.
Great to
Okay.
be here.
Go on ahead, Franz.
Yeah, so in 1964, we moved to Cypress in North Orange County. I got my driver's license, but Dad wouldn't let me have the car to go see Lions. But I had $200 saved up from a paper route, and I bought a little 125cc Honda, and that was my transport. And so I saw this advertisement in the paper, Greer Black Prudhomme, my heroes, versus the Valkyrie jet car at Lions Drag Strip one Friday night. So I got on my bike, and that was the very first drag race that I ever saw.
Wow.
And what an experience it was. For those of you who have been to Lions, you know that it was dark, and it was mysterious, and it was strange, and you couldn't see that well. And when the cars would come up the strip, they would push them, and then the engines would light, and these flames would come out, and they would do this turnaround right at the start-finish line. And this was like ceremonial, almost. and then they would line them up, and the excitement would build, and then I think they didn't have a Christmas tree light at the time. I think they still had a flagman. But off they'd go, and there was this horrendous noise, and the flames would disappear very quickly in the distance, and just like that, it was quiet.
Yes.
I remember the
Amen.
flames dying like a light switch.
Yes.
They were just on and then
Yeah.
off into
And
the
it's
darkness.
quiet, right?
Amen, brother.
And then you look for the light. Who was the winner?
Yes.
So it was just almost like a holy experience today, But back then, so every Friday night, I would try to make it a point to go to Lions, and my favorite place to hang out would be the pits, because that's where you get to be close to the cars and get to see them up close, And I was 16 years old, and every once in a while, somebody would draw me into the program. I remember seeing Danny Ongais drove up one time. He had a car, a sedan, and was pulling a trailer. There was a Dragmaster chassis with a Chevy engine. He was like one of the top guns. And I walked up as he pulled up, and I'm looking at this dragster. This is really cool. Danny hops out, steps outside. He's all by himself. He looks at me and he says, "Hey, Slim, want to help me unload this car?" Would I?
Yeah, of course.
You mean I can touch it?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
16 years old. And so I helped him unload the car, and all of a sudden it's like, yes, I got to actually touch a dragster. So that was so cool. Now, unbeknownst to me at the time, apparently Bob Skinner and Tom Job were also cruising the pits, but with a different agenda. They were looking to participate, taking notes. And eventually these are the guys that evolved into what we now know as the surfers. So that was it. And, Lions was a place that I would hang out almost every Friday night. But I'd heard there was this place called Bakersfield. All the fuel dragsters would go to Bakersfield in March, and they would race this event. And the guys from back east would show up. And these were names that I'd only heard about. Garlitz, Kalita, Marvin Schwartz.
And even though it was an independent race, it was the biggest race of the year. I mean, everybody came, and they came to win. They didn't just come to show up and get, at the time, match racing was kind of starting, and you would get money just to show up and stuff. Mm-hmm. That's not what was going on at Bakersfield. It was drag racing to the death. I mean, it was a big deal.
Yeah, it was.
Big deal. There were reputations at stake, and it was East versus West.
Sure.
This was totally serious.
Agreed.
So here comes March 1965, and I'm still 16 years old, and I would really like to go to Bakersfield. And so I asked Dad, can I borrow the car? Bakersfield is 140 miles north, over the Grapevine, and Dad said no. It's too far. You're not an experienced enough driver. Well, I had this 125cc Honda that I bought for $200, and it was mine. So Dad wasn't going to stop me there. So I got up at 5 a.m. in the morning and got on the bike, and it started to drizzle. And I had an open-face helmet, and I did have goggles, but it did hurt a bit. So I turned around, went back home, and made a bib out of a milk carton. Because, by golly, I'm going to go to Bakersfield. I'm going to make this race no matter what.
Milk carton visor.